Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Two Way Tonight. I am your tour guide, Mark Halperin, as we jaunt our way through a cavalcade of news stories this evening, concluding the day on the East Coast, where it's 6 Eastern. Here, where I am in Milan, it's 11, but I'm having dinner because I spent my evening in a very enjoyable fashion with a bunch of Europeans and talked to them about Donald Trump and JD Vance and Putin and Germany. Fascinating. I don't know how many of you have the opportunity to talk to Europeans, but they are so interesting on all the issues that we talk about here. They're super interested in Musk, super interested in obviously in Donald Trump, and super interested in Putin and America's role in the world. Our guest tonight, as Larry King would say, for the full hour is former Ohio Congressman Tim Ryan. I'm supposed to be objective, as I've said before, about everybody I cover. Love Tim Ryan, and most reporters I know love Tim Ryan. The Republicans love him, Democrats love him. He is Mr. Popular, and I've talked to him in a while. I cannot wait to talk to him about a bunch of stuff that's in the news. So we'll get to the Tim Ryan in a minute. Of always, if you're here on the two-way platform, we'd love to get to your questions. Not Haley, but anybody else who wants to ask a question tonight, please raise your yellow hand. Katie raised her hand earlier, or maybe it's yesterday. Didn't get to Katie. Katie, I'd love to get you on because I know in part you want to praise Table 17. So if you're here on the two-way platform and you want to ask a question, please raise your electronic hand. If you're watching on YouTube or X, don't raise your hand and don't put smack in the chat. Please let this platform be different. Don't use this platform to attack personally. And you MAGA people, just settle down. You control all the government. No reason to be so hostile to people who have different views than you do. While tens of millions of you are MAGA, tens of millions of your fellow Americans are not. Peace, love, and understanding. Please project that in whatever you put in the chat. The presumption of grace to all. As I said, I'm here in Europe. I was speaking at an event for the Core Club. It's a club that's in New York. They're opening a branch in Milan. Its ethos is, I'd say, identical to what we try to do at Two Way. They believe in inclusivity, hearing from all voices, and embrace a culture of trying to understand through conversation. Okay. And tonight I had the opportunity to speak to people from across Europe, a lot of Italians, but also people from across Europe. And their interest in what's going on in the United States is sky high. Their fascination with what's going on is high, but their concern is very high. I heard concerns about Germany rearming. I heard concerns about the United States abandoning Europe. I heard concerns about JD Vance, concerns about Donald Trump, and their mindset is so similar to what a lot of Americans are feeling now. There's a sense of specific worries about specific things that the Trump administration is doing, but there's also just I would not say low grade, I would say medium to high grade concern that they can't even spell out with exactness about what it is that's worrying them. But there's absolute worry, and it's so fascinating to hear. Core Club is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year, and they are doing the kinds of things that I think so important, convening people to have conversations that are reasonable, where all voices can be heard. I said things as I always do when I give public talks. I said positive things about Trump, and I said negative things about Trump. I said humorous things I'd like to think about Trump, and I said deadly serious things about Trump. It's the only way that we're going to get through this as a not just as a country, but as a world, is to be sensitive to the fact that humor is always a good thing, and respect is always a good thing. And I couldn't appreciate the opportunity more to get to speak to a bunch of folks from Europe, but also to be able to listen to them and hear their questions. My friends Jenny and Danjean, who run Core, were nice enough to invite me here and nice enough to produce an extraordinary meal for me that includes the remnants of my veal Milanese, which I may try to eat during the show. In any event, Congressman Ryan is one of my favorite people in and out of politics. And at a time when the Democratic Party is having trouble figuring out how to appeal to white working class, sorry, didn't mean to say white, working class voters, at a time when the Democratic Party is trying to convince people that they've got authentic leaders at a time when the Democratic Party is trying to figure out how to compete in what are now red states, at a time when the Democratic Party is trying to uh, uh, represent a reality that you can be a fighter for what you believe and be extending the presumption of grace to people in the other party. There are very few people who embody all of those positives. And Congressman Ryan, former Congressman Ryan of Ohio, is one of those. So I couldn't be happier to have him here and to talk to him about everything that's in the news. So, Congressman, welcome in. Thank you for joining. I'm going to ask you to unmute. And
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Great to be on with you.
just couldn't be happier to have you here. And just as the folks I talked to here in Milan tonight embody a curiosity about what Donald Trump is been doing, and Elon Musk and JD Vance, but also a concern. I feel like you're the exact same way. You're interested in what's happening, but you're also concerned. So let's run through the news together, and I'll just do my headlines, and you chime in like you're doing color commentary at a game of the Ohio State. You just jump in whenever. So
Right.
biggest news of the day, and we're going to get to a lot of domestic stuff, but the biggest news of the day is President Trump, President Putin had a long conversation, and President Trump's Truth Social post suggested a lot of optimism about where they may go. Number one, please. I won't read the whole Truth Social post because it's, as you'll see, quite long. But he said that in his phone conversation with President Putin of Russia, very good and productive. They talked about energy and infrastructure. They want to end this horrible war. Many elements of a contract for peace were discussed. And President Zelensky's reaction was he wants to know more, but obviously, you can take this down and put up number two, please. Whether you think President Trump is a genius or whether you think he's going to be able to end the war, this didn't happen under Joe Biden. Now you could say he's on the verge of giving too much to Putin, but I'll just say again, this did not happen under Joe Biden. So here's the Washington Post take on it. Trump, Putin to agree to partial ceasefire in Ukraine, but plan needs Kyiv sign off. So, Congressman, tell me what you like about what Donald Trump is doing on Russia, Ukraine, and tell me what you don't like.
Well, I'd first say, the pandemic didn't start under Joe Biden. So, like, if you want to get in a tit for tat for what happens under presidential rule, there's always a lot of pluses and minuses.
Well, let me just stop you because I know you're comfortable with it back and forth, and I'm not interrupting. I'm not interrupting you so much as asking for clarification. I'm not saying that Joe Biden is a worse president than Donald Trump in every respect, and we can talk about the pandemic if you want. But did you see Joe Biden on a track to ending the war in Ukraine?
No,
Okay.
not at all. No,
okay.
Not at all.
So, yeah, and this could end the war.
The upside is, he's trying to end the war. The negative is it's not a peace. I don't think it will end up being a peaceful resolution where both sides are going to get an even deal. Clearly, Putin was the aggressor, and any way of getting an agreement where both sides are kind of in agreement or it's a balanced peace settlement, then we need, I feel, to continue to support Ukraine, make it unpalatable for Putin, make it unpalatable for Russia to keep going. And this is basically pulling the rug out from Ukraine and then trying to negotiate a deal for them at a position of weakness. And so I think it's going to be very, very difficult.
So if the president called you and said, Congressman, I saw you on two-way and I heard your concerns.
I love Halperin.
Yeah, I love Halperin. happy to be on with him always. What would you how would you tell him to proceed? What would your advice be to him how to proceed? Because it sounds like you're favorable towards talking. You're just worried about where the talks will lead. So where would you tell him to draw the lines in the conversation and in the deal?
I would just say, kind of espouse Ronald Reagan's principles, quite frankly, and that's always negotiate from a position of strength and let us help the Ukraine negotiate from a position of strength. And that means, they need the armaments, they need the artillery. And look, of course, we want Europe to do more, and Europe is doing more. And so that, I guess, would be a plus in Trump's column to get them to actually do more. But to abandon our allies, to abandon Europe, and all because there's this huge gray area around the relationship that he has with Putin is very disconcerting to a lot of people.
I'm just going to ask you to be more specific because I understand generally what you're saying, but what I don't understand still is where are the lines for you? In other words, you don't want a bad deal. I don't think he wants a bad deal. You say abandoning Europe. I think he doesn't want Soviet Russian tanks on the Champs-Élysées. So I know you don't have access to all the classified information, but what are some things you just that are bright lines for you to say? For instance, there's talk now that the U.S. is going to codify Russia's control of Crimea. Is that a bright line for you? Would you say no should be no deal
Yeah, I would
that
say
gives
no. I would say no shot, but you can't pull the aid from them. You can't pull the military support from them, and then say, well, you got to negotiate a deal. I think the idea for me would have been you support the Ukraine, you support the freedom fighters there, you support Europe with aid that is needed to be able to do that, and then you try to negotiate from that point. Now, I've been very critical of President Biden. I don't think he was capable, quite frankly, at the end of having any kind of sophisticated, nuanced negotiation between Vladimir Putin and the Ukrainians. I just don't think he was capable of doing that.
So let me push back on the point you made. I think that I'm very supportive of Ukraine, and I think it's a tragedy for history that Putin is clearly, if there is an end to the war, is going to be rewarded for his illegal, aggressive behavior. But at the same time, it seems pretty clear that Zelensky doesn't want a deal. And so when you say it's a tragedy or whatever word you use to cut off military aid, to cut off the intelligence cooperation, it appears that President Trump's attitude was the only way we're going to get him to the table is by making it clear that there's a condition on our American support. It's horrible that it had to be that way, I guess. But if there is a peace deal and the killing stops and American tax dollars no longer have to flow to Ukraine, if President Trump says in his memoirs or in a press conference, the only way I got the guy to the table was to cut those things off briefly, would you not then say, well, all things considered, that was the right thing to do?
Well, I would say, what are you doing to the Russians? What are you taking away from Russia? Because I look at, I hate to simplify this, but it's like a divorce. If both parents in a child custody case, like both parents are going to walk out of the child custody case being mad that the other side got something and they didn't get something. But the reality is that's probably where you need to be in order to serve the best interests of the kids. I think in this scenario, it's very one-sided on behalf of taking stuff away from the Ukrainians, giving stuff to the Russians, including territory, Crimea, or whatever the case may be, rewarding really, really bad behavior, and not asking what are the Russians going to sacrifice in this deal. It seems like they're going to get what they wanted. Is the sacrifice? You're not going to get more of Ukraine. I mean, what's Trump as an honest broker, supposedly an honest broker, taking away from the Russians that they would want that they're not going to get?
Well, he threatened sanctions, but let me ask it this way. And again, I'm not trying to be
Well,
belligerent. I really
no,
want,
no. I
I
mean, I
really
love
want,
you.
I,
I love
I
you.
want, I want, I want to understand. I know, I want to understand your point of view.
You're already taking away
Yeah.
from Ukrainian. The
Right.
aid's not going, but you're
Right.
saying you may
Right.
issue sanctions.
Right.
That's a big difference.
Well, but I think he thinks there are two asymmetries. One is Russia has the upper hand here, and two, uh, Russia at least claims, and today is at least some maybe evidence of it, that they want to be at the table to solve this, and that was not the case with Zelensky. Let me ask you this: you ran for president, so you wanted to be president. You don't think Joe Biden was doing a good job in ending the war. You don't like what President Trump is doing. I normally don't like this kind of question, but I think in this case it's appropriate. What would a President Ryan be doing to end the war?
I wouldn't have pulled away the support for the Ukrainians. I think I would even up the support for the Ukrainians. I think you make it absolutely apparent that you're not going to abandon them. and there will be a very high price to pay for Russia. And I would start with that to the point where you can try to get them to the negotiating table. But knowing that Trump was, kind of doing okay during the election, knowing that he won the election, then the Russians knew he was going to pull the plug on Ukraine. So of course they're not. I mean, I didn't read all of the articles on the talks, but it looks like this deal on a ceasefire around energy assets and some other things. It's basically like asking the Ukrainians to disarm. And if anybody in the world believes that the Ukrainians are going to disarm and Vladimir Putin's not going to do anything, like he wouldn't storm through Ukraine, then you're not reading his life and his demeanor and his worldview and what he wants to accomplish with reuniting the greater Soviet Union. So I think the short answer is you up the support, you up the armaments, and you try to get him to a position where he knows this is going to be a stalemate, and then you negotiate.
I so respect your views on this. I could talk to you about this all night, but there's so many other topics I want to get to, but I'll just close with this. You say up the support. The Biden administration fought for additional support beyond what they delivered. They did have some self-drawn lines to avoid starting World War III. There doesn't seem to be an appetite in the populace or in the Congress for much more support, and in some quarters, any support. So are you talking about doubling the amount? Or are you talking about different kinds of arms? What would be, in your view as commander in chief, what's upping the arms to a degree that it would be dispositive to get Putin to sue for peace?
Well, I sat on the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, and I've been out now for over 2 years, 2.5 years. So I don't know exactly what the back and forth is as far as the strategy and the tactics on the ground would be, but I would certainly be talking to the Joint Chiefs of Staff and others as to what that would look like, and working directly with the Ukrainians as to what that would look like. But let me also say, a part of this, as you know, as a student of history, how did we win the Cold War? How did we position ourselves as a country? It's through the speeches and the rhetoric and the inspiration of the President of the United States. Whether it's the Ich bin ein Berliner speech, or it's the tear down the wall speech. Those are the two iconic classic speeches. But at the end of the day, the reality is President Biden could not articulate that vision, not just around why we should support Ukraine, but also around a lot of other domestic issues, which led to, I think, how Trump was able to win. So not having the president that can articulate why we should support him and how, we could put people in positions of power, not just the presidency and the House and the Senate, that would pull the rug on these folks is, I think, a lack of presidential leadership. And I think one of many things that we could discuss tonight.
Okay. You are, as I am, a student of Donald Trump's attempts to treat the other two branches as non-co-equal.
And that's putting it very politely.
Yeah.
Mark.
And so here he is today, number 3, please, on Truth Social. He has, since he became a national candidate in 2015 and probably before, he has frequently not shown the kind of respect for the judiciary as most elected officials do. Here he's writing about the judge who ruled on this immigration case. Radical left lunatic of a judge, a troublemaker, an agitator. Does this thing say impeached in it? I don't think it does. But yes, it does. It should be impeached. Okay, I'm forced to hear it should be impeached. So here's the reaction of Chief Justice Roberts, number 4. Not only Donald Trump, but Steve Bannon and other Trump supporters have called now for the widespread impeachment and removal of judges who rule in a way they don't like. Justice Roberts, this is a New York Times headline, criticizes calls for judges' impeachment after Trump's statement, issued a rare public statement just hours after President Trump called for the impeachment of a judge. So, Congressman, in the context of all the things Donald Trump does that violates norms, that challenge the co-equal status of other branches, it was enough for Chief Justice Roberts to make a very unusual statement. How bothered are you by this, or is this just more blowing steam off on Truth Social and it doesn't matter?
I mean, I am bothered by it, but again, you don't know what to take seriously from him and what not to. Again, this guy, this president, is a stress test to our democracy on all accounts, on all levels, for executive power versus the other co-equal branches of government. You saw Congressman John Larson in the House Ways and Means Committee the other day give a fiery speech about where's Elon Musk and how the Ways and Means Committee, the oldest committee in Congress, was acquiescing to the executive branch. And I will tell you, I served in Congress since 2003. And you remember all the old bulls, John Dingell, Jack Murtha, Dave Obey, and really on both sides. That if a president was trying to do to them 20 years ago what he's doing to Congress today, he would have absolutely got shut down on January 20th at 12:01 p.m. It wouldn't have went anywhere, and they would have let them know beforehand that we're the Congress, we're Article 1. And so to see Chief Justice Roberts, who disagreed with some of his opinions, agreed with a few, to see him stand up and protect the institution is heartening, and tells me that, and I had a few conversations today with some Republican members of the House of Representatives who talk about bright red lines. Impeaching judges is a bright red line for a lot of Republicans in the House. So this makes me feel good.
Have House Republicans spoken out against it? If they have, I've missed it. I've missed it.
Well, no, I mean, I think if there was actual movement to do that, where they were actually,
they wouldn't vote for impeachment.
They would not vote it in support. No, this is just a few that I talked to today.
Yeah.
But to me, I think that could end up being a bright red line for some of them.
Right. With a normal president who didn't have this mysterious stranglehold over his party, you'd hear lots of Republicans cheering the Chief Justice, I would think.
Yeah.
But we don't. All right. Again, I could stay on this topic with you forever, but let's move on to your party. Again, if you want to have a question for the congressman here and you're here on the two-way platform, please raise your hand. Where do you stand on this fight, which again is a soap opera? Their personalities involved, but I think it is representative of the quandary the party finds itself in. Where do you stand on if one is Chuck Schumer needs to go and go now, and 10 is I get why the minority leader did what he did. Where are you in sympathy or understanding of Chuck Schumer's plight currently?
Well, I ran against Nancy Pelosi in 2016, saying that we needed some new leadership in the party because Donald Trump won and he had co-opted our message and he was resonating with the American people, and the Democratic Party brand was in the toilet and was only going to get worse. And there was no way to change that brand unless we changed leaders. So I've had that position, and I'm glad Hakeem Jeffries is now in the House. And Leader Pelosi, to her credit, was the first of kind of the old guard to step down, recognizing with her keen political skills and instincts that it was time. And I don't think Chuck Schumer is going to do that. And I'm not naive enough to say, do I think Chuck Schumer should go? Yeah. I mean, not for just this reason. I just think in modern politics, you need somebody who can stand in front of a camera, articulate a vision, talk about being inspiring, like I mentioned about presidents. And I don't think he can do that. He has a skill set that's very effective in a lot of ways. That's not it. And I think that's what we need right now. A party in the recent polling at 27% approval. I mean, that's how do you rehabilitate that without changing the quarterback or changing the coach? And I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, so I know a lot about changing the quarterback and changing the coach. Sometimes you have to do
it. Because we love each other, I'll say this with respect. I want you to be specific here. You've dodged a few of my questions already. Let's say you were the chief strategist for the Democratic caucus, House and Senate, and you were with them last week, and Schumer said, well, yesterday I said that the Republicans don't have the votes to pass cloture to get the CR to the House version of the CR to the floor. And today I'm thinking of going out and announcing that I'm voting for the cloture. And you were in the room with Schumer and Jeffries and the other leaders in both the House and the Senate. What would your strategy have been at that point?
My first comment to Chuck would have been, why in the fuck did you hang the House of Representatives out to dry?
Right.
That would have been my back room in, just between the boys. Like, Why would you do that? Why would you let all of our frontline members go out, and I've been in the House for a long time. I've seen this happen time and time again. Why would you do that to those members? You clearly a blatant disregard for their political careers and what political position they're in. That would have been the first thing I would have said.
And just to clarify, by not telling them in advance that this thing was going to pass the Senate.
Yeah, I mean, so fine. That's your decision. Again, bicameral legislature, separation of powers, the whole 9 yards. Like you have every right to do that. We'd like to, but at least have the decency and the kind of collegiality and the respect, quite frankly, for those House members. And I thought what always AOC was saying was exactly right. Like we've been on the other side of that more than once. That would have been the first thing I would have said. And if it happened before the House voted, I would say why. Okay, what's the reason why? Because I actually think there's a good argument to be made to saying, let's pass this, let's move it on, and let's not let the fight for the next couple. I don't understand all he was saying about a government shutdown would give more power to Doge and Trump to dismantle the government. Maybe, maybe not. But the argument I thought was most compelling was why would we have a fight between Republicans and Democrats about a government shutdown? Same old food fight, right? For 2 weeks, 3 weeks, however long it would have went on. It'd have been, same old stuff in Washington. They're all the same, whatever. Or let's get back on track of them actually making these huge cuts and cutting the VA and cutting 80,000 jobs. Let that really penetrate the national consciousness. That's a legitimate argument. He's not making that argument, but I think, again, I'm a huge Bill Clinton guy, and Carville and those guys, Begala. Like, explain it to us. Tell us what you're doing. Let us know why and what you're doing and why. That, to me, I think a lot of rational people, if you said to the, to the liberal base who just wants a pound of flesh, right? If you go to them and say, look, I get it too. I want a pound of flesh. I'm mad about, it's maddening what they're doing. But Trump's numbers are going down. They're going down on the economy. I know the 47% and all that. He's not expanding his base. His numbers are down on the economy and they're down on inflation. And those are the two places, and the Doge thing's going to catch up to them. Let's for once as Democrats, and that's what I would say from the microphone, let's for once as Democrats play a short, medium, and long-term strategy here, because his numbers are sinking. And guess what's coming down the pike? Not just cuts to programs that people haven't maybe really felt yet. Let's rally the veterans. And here he comes with a $5 trillion tax cut for the top 1% while you're marketing for Elon Musk. That's what we want the story to be. So if Chuck Schumer came to the Democrats and the public and said that, I think most people would say, I don't disagree. I want to kick their ass, but I get it. I get it. But
all right, I was going to play some sound bites from Schumer on The View, but I know what you'd say about them, so I'm not going to. Instead, and again, we're going to get to your questions in just a minute, so please raise your hand if you've got a question or comment for former Congressman Ryan of the great Buckeye State. J.D. Vance, you ran against him. Red State, you ran a heck of a race and did not beat him, but got to observe him up close. Here's the vice president today speaking to a tech conference in Washington, D.C. about globalization. Play number 7, please.
Friends, both on the tech optimist side and on the populist side, not to see the failure of the logic of globalization as a failure of innovation. Indeed, I'd say that globalization's hunger for cheap labor is a problem precisely because it's been bad for innovation. Both our working people, our populists, and our innovators gathered here today have the same enemy. And the solution, I believe, is American innovation. Because in the long run, it's technology that increases the value of labor. Innovations like the American system and the interchangeable parts revolution it sparked, or Ford's moving assembly line that skyrocketed the productivity of our workers. That's how American industry became the envy of the world. And that's what I really want to talk about today, why innovation is key to winning the worldwide manufacturing competition, to giving our workers a fair deal, and to reclaiming our heritage via America's great industrial comeback. And I believe that's what we're on the cusp of, a great American industrial comeback.
So, Congressman, I was not particularly impressed by that guy when he ran against you. I shared the view that many had that he was kind of a phony. And I was not surprised to hear many Republicans, including at the convention in Milwaukee, saying, please don't pick J.D. Vance. He's a phony and he's not true MAGA. I've been super impressed with him since the election and during the election. I just think he's a super talented guy. And I love the speech he gave in Europe. The people I spoke to tonight here in Milan were not big fans of it, but I think he made it on history as one of the most important speeches an American leader has given overseas in the last 50 years. So what is, as a close observer of your fellow Buckeye, what is your critique of how he's done as vice president so far?
Well, I think there's no doubt about it. He's a smart guy. There's, Ivy League educated. He's a sharp guy. He could get into the nuance of policies. I still think the sycophant comes out in appropriate times, like it did in the White House Oval Office meeting with Zelensky. And I think it's going to be interesting to watch him operate. Now it's been kind of like, pretty much the first couple rounds of a fight where there's nothing controversial. But how does he respond to a $5 trillion tax cut that goes primarily to the wealthiest? How does that go down? How do you argue populism with that? I think, how do you argue debt and deficits with that? And again, I think I'm a firm believer too that innovation can help us reform government, can help us build the kind of economy that we need. But the other thing is, and he doesn't speak really to this point, is that the CHIPS Act, we're talking about reindustrialization, right? The CHIPS Act, which is basically helping reshore chip manufacturing. And again, what under the background music and all this, Mark, is that President Biden is not able to articulate this reindustrialization vision. And so it's opened the door for Trump to take credit for all of this. But it was the CHIPS Act. It was the IRA. It was a lot of the Democratic proposals. In my old congressional district, just outside of Youngstown, there's a battery factory with 2,000 UAW jobs making $35 an hour. Best jobs in town. And that was in part because our country was moving and our companies were moving towards reshoring and moving into the green economy. Now he's come out against the IRA. They're looking like they want to dismantle the CHIPS Act, not sure. And then the third pillar of that was obviously the infrastructure bill. So I'll be anxious to see. I think it's been a blank slate up to this point, and in those environments, he's going to do very, very well. And I love what he honestly was talking about with AI. I think if that ends up being the administration's position for us to dominate artificial intelligence and win that race to the future, I do think JD probably understands that a lot better than President Trump does. But that's something the Democrats, and again, just let's do a sidebar here on the Democrats. Like, why aren't the Democrats saying, yes, we're for that too? We want rules of the road and all of that with artificial intelligence. But let the American people know that we see the opportunity in artificial intelligence to streamline government. I'm working with a company now called Code Comply. It's for building commissioners to be able to use artificial intelligence. These guys make investments in the buildings. It takes years sometimes in the big cities to get approval that, you're up to code. AI is doing it in weeks, maybe a month or two, right? Like, you want investment in the cities, Democrats? You want investment into the urban areas? You want to, make sure we're lifting people up and creating jobs? Then you better cut the bureaucracy. So go for that. Same thing with Doge. What's the top line on Doge? Government sucks. It's broken. Wastes a ton of money. Your money, your taxpayer money. Why wouldn't Democrats come to them and say, here's our 10 or 15 things in the government that we think we can save a boatload of money on in Medicare, in Medicaid, in defense, in crop subsidies or corporate wealth, whatever. Just pick 10, but don't come out and look like you're against what Doge is doing, because 99.9% of the American people are for, generally speaking, the idea of reforming government. Now you're in a position to say, we're not going with that. We're not cutting 80,000 people from the VA. And back to the Schumer point, I think one of the things I would have told them, if you are going to agree, if you are going to agree, have a couple asks, right? Don't just go with the program. Say, absolutely not 80,000 VA jobs. No shot. They ain't happening. We're not going with it. Now you start to shift the narrative of what Democrats are fighting for and what he's done. And it's like these little opportunities that we're missing that I think can help us reshape the party, modernize the party for the future. And we're just, we're not doing it, I think, at a sophisticated level.
I get a million follow-ups, but I'm going to get folks in briefly. You mentioned one company you're working with. Just tell people what you're doing now in terms of for-profit, nonprofit. What's the Tim Ryan agenda these days?
Yeah, I'm working, with the AI company, the code comply company, a company called Toggle that's doing the same thing for building construction companies who are actually doing on the private side. I'm working with Senator Mary Landrieu, former Congressman Kendrick Meek, and former Mayor Mike Nutter on a group called Natural Allies. We're advocating for natural gas, primarily talking to Democrats about how we need this base load energy. With AI, reshoring, the energy demand is going through the roof, wind and solar, which we're all for, cannot meet that need. And we think natural gas is a way for us to meet that need and displace coal and oil and bend the curve on carbon. And then just, working with some unions to help them with some of their work, especially in the natural gas industry. And then also, doing a lot of the tech stuff. I love this space where technology can reform government and create growth for average people. So I love that stuff. So that's kind of where I'm living right now.
All right, Congressman, thank you. Let's bring folks in again, as always. Tell folks who don't know where you are. Dean's in Ohio, so you didn't need to tell us that. Although the Congressman probably wants to know where in Ohio and what's on your mind, Dean.
Yeah, North Canton, so just to your west, Congressman.
All right.
And yeah, I'm a Browns fan too, so yeah, we're sharing that pain. Listen, I would have I lean right. I did vote for JD Vance in the Senate, but I wouldn't have cried much with you in the if you would have won that seat. Look, first of all, you're in the heart of it all. You're from Ohio. You're a good Ohio guy. I always saw you, right or wrong, as more of like a Tip O'Neill type guy too, on the left side. But I think you would agree. I shouldn't assume, but I want to see a strong Democratic Party. I think it's important. Two strong parties make the United States strong. Congressman, would you agree that the center mass of the Democratic Party has had I'll call it a big shift to the left, and it really seems, as I know some of the things that you're for, it has seemed to have the party has seemed to have left you. What needs to happen? First of all, I guess do you agree, or what needs to happen in order for the Democratic Party to become a strong, vibrant center mass party again?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I would say that the perception of the party is much more left than the rank and file members of the party are. And I think the rank and file members of the party were kind of where Joe Biden was in 20 when he won the nomination. It was Scranton Joe. That changed once he got in. I'll, acquiesce to that point. But I do think that most of the people in the party are, moderate, maybe left but pragmatic, and certainly not. Most of them certainly don't want to have the culture wars continue. They want to have an economic Democratic Party. They want a Bill Clinton style, kind of minus the NAFTA. They want the working class. They want a strong union. They want to talk about Social Security, Medicare, prescription drugs. How do we build the middle class? But also, like, I think most of us wanted to modernize, like the stuff Mark and I were just talking about around technology, like grab that stuff and run with it, because I think there is a heck of an opportunity there. So I do think the perception is that it's more left than it really is. And there's a lot more guys like me who could probably persuade a guy like you to maybe vote for me. But we've clearly lost that, even since 22 when I ran. It's hard. We need like a complete rebrand, reform of the party. But you need some new ideas to do that. We got to get back to the Bill Clinton model.
Yeah, I hope to see you back in elected office. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Dean, thank you. One question for you before you go. If there was a gubernatorial general election, Ramaswamy versus Ryan, who would you vote for?
I really like Ramaswamy.
Okay.
I like the dynamics that he brings. But again, I wouldn't cry to see a Governor Ryan in the state house.
Lake Ohio, Dean. It's all about Lake Ohio.
Thank you, Dean. Congressman, it's a great slogan for a Democrat running in Ohio. Republicans wouldn't cry if Tim Ryan won.
There you go.
Vivek's going to be the next governor, right?
Don't know.
Who's the Democratic nominee going to be?
Don't know.
Who would you guess?
I don't know. Obviously people want me to do it. I think Sherrod Brown's looking at it as well. I think it's really too early to tell. How does DOGE go? How does the tax cut go? What's the economy look like? What's the stock market look like? Ohio is still a bellwether in that regard.
Yeah. So what would if you ran against Ramaswamy? How would you win? What would be not your message, but demographically, geographically? How does a Democrat win Ohio? Where do you need more vote than, for instance, you got in your Senate race?
You got to, same old story. You got to, do better in the suburbs. And I think a lot of suburban communities voted for the pro-choice amendment and the marijuana bill a couple of years ago in suburban Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati. So you'd have to try to maintain some of that and run your numbers up, obviously, with the college educated. But you got to get into the small towns. You've got to get into Steubenville, East Liverpool, Portsmouth, Chillicothe, Youngstown, Toledo. You got to get into those towns and really make an economic argument, which could be available to our candidate if the economy is going bad and there's a huge tax cut. And you can say, and then there's a lot of stuff around Vivek, too, that I think you want to highlight.
Right. I've been to more than half those towns. Just saying. What are the odds? What are the odds you run? 50-50?
No, probably not that good. Probably, I don't know, 30% at this point. There's just, you don't want to hear my story, but like I was in politics for 22 years.
Yeah.
I got a 10-year-old kid. I'm coaching this football team. I'm coaching this basketball team. It's absolute most fun me and my wife have every week is the couple hours we get to do that. I take them to practice. I coach them. I take them home from practice. I take them to school. It's just pure joy, and like to go back. And I know what it takes to run in Ohio.
Yeah.
For better or worse, it's a hell of a lift, win, lose, or draw. So it's a lot of time away from the people you love the most.
In terms of your son's safety, do you have any reservations about letting him play football?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, we worry every game, every hit. He's 10, so it's not like, there's linebackers coming to crush him like it's the NFL. So I think it's still relatively safe. He's a quarterback, so that keeps him a little bit safer. And I've already taught him how to slide and run out of bounds. Some big guys coming after him.
All right. Keep us posted on that. All right, Jordan, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind for Congressman Ryan.
Hey, Mark. Thank you. Hi, Congressman. Thank you for taking my question. My question revolves around Trump's positioning toward Putin individually and then Europe as a whole. So kind of how I've seen Trump position himself with Putin is he's trying to become a little more friendly with them to alienate Russia from China and Iran, and use that, work with Putin to, I guess, broker more of a peaceful relationship with them. And, I kind of see that in a sense how Roosevelt and Churchill partnered with Stalin back during World War II. Both Stalin and Putin, bad guys. I'm not, trying to be an apologist for either one of them, but that's kind of how I see him positioning himself. And secondly, towards Europe as a whole, earlier you mentioned that, it's kind of like we just pulled the rug out from Europe. And, I'm kind of looking at it from the stance of we're, giving Europe so much money, especially in terms of funding for Ukraine. Europe has, we've been underwriting their defense spending for defense for quite a while. They even bought more oil from Russia last year than they gave to Ukraine in totality. So, looking at that from our perspective, we do have a massive debt issue. We do have a healthcare system that needs to be fixed and a ton of other things. So my, curiosity is like the Democrats positioning towards, why they're like so freaked out about us saving money to allocate, towards the U.S. for a change, opposed to just sending it a lot of it abroad.
Great question, Jordan. Congressman.
Yeah, there's a lot there. First and foremost, I agreed with Trump, and I think most Americans did, when he was trying to get more money for them to contribute to NATO. I think that's great. Going to Europe, and saying, hey, we can only give X, but you guys need to kick in if you want to help Ukraine. Like I wouldn't have a problem with that. Just so we're supporting Ukraine and we're giving them what they need to be able to negotiate from a position of strength. I think that's where Trump sometimes overplays his hand, as opposed to be the coalition builder, use the bully pulpit, get Europe on our side. Why aren't you telling Putin that we're going to export? And this is another thing I disagreed with President Biden on, is the pause on liquid natural gas exporting. In Eastern Ohio, Western PA, I think you've heard them politically in Pennsylvania. But why wouldn't we go and say we're going to export liquid natural gas to our friends and allies in Europe? And it's going to be a better price, and it's going to be cleaner than what Putin is shipping over there. Like put the squeeze on Putin so that you can get him to the table and to negotiate. But it's been very, very one-sided. And you mentioned, cutting this money for debt and deficits reasons. I mean, that's just, and I appreciate you even considering that, because I think Democrats need to talk about the debt and deficit too. But why, if you're concerned about the debt and deficit, you don't cut taxes for $5 trillion, and it's and primarily going to go to the top 1% of the people in the country, when we already are running significant deficits every single year. And so, come on, like you can't have it both ways. So I think there's ways to go about it. I haven't really thought of the Putin-Iran thing, so that's interesting. I'll give that some thought, but I don't have any support.
Jordan, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jordan.
Tim, welcome in. Question for Tim, after you tell folks who don't know where you are.
Hey there, Tim. Hey, I'm from Dallas, Texas. I did vote for Trump, but I figure Tim's could stick together. So I got a couple questions for you.
All right.
I'm in the building industry. I'm pretty interested in code comply, just as a side topic. Pretty interested in that. But what I was thinking about recently is with the deportation to El Salvador. There's been a lot of commentary on Twitter about the legality of it and the judge and everything that's happening right now. I'm curious to see how Democrats can thread the needle between something that's extremely popular, which is deporting MS-13 or Tren de Aragua members, and then defending a Hamas protester in the States, and something that's, to their point, protecting due process. How do you thread that needle? And as a whole, it seems like, for example, Gavin Newsom is trying to run to the middle, and he's getting kind of lambasted for it. So if we can say we want to run to the middle, but it seems like the primary base is really pushing against it. So what is the answer for the Democrats to, provide that win, for the Democrats that they want to get in the primaries and in the general?
Yeah,
Tim,
no,
thank you.
I appreciate it, Tim. it's hard because I feel like the perception of our base, and of course our base is more liberal, more progressive, but I really don't believe that the vast majority of Democrats are as liberal as you would think, or that most people that get a lot of their news from social media or watch Fox would think. I just don't think our rank and file members are like that, and that's why a lot of those rank and file and that's why the Republicans frame us that way. And then my criticism is that we always take the bait. Like we always want to win the argument. And so to your point with the Al Salvadorians and Hamas and all of this stuff, ignore it. Absolutely ignore it. Justice Roberts just did you a huge favor. You don't have to talk about it. Great job, Justice Roberts. Appreciate you, sticking with the rule of law and co-equal branches of government. And now let's talk about cutting 80,000 workers from the VA, because that's BS. And let's talk about this tax cut that's coming that's, going to go blah, blah, blah. And then get back on message. But you can't, you got to be very judicious is where you're putting your attention, especially in a decentralized, fractured media environment. You can't take the bait on this stuff, because the second you do, and that's really the problem now, is all you need is one member of the House of Representatives to comment on it, and that's what's on Fox News, and that's what's getting spun out on the social platforms. So I think to the extent you can, and you hate to say this because we are for due process and we are for human rights and all whatever. But you sometimes you can't swing at the pitch. You got to look at it.
Yeah. Tim, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
All right, Congressman, let's do a quick rapid round. I'm going to hold you.
Mark, I'm loving this. This is awesome.
All right. Well, good. You come back regularly.
I don't have a glass of wine like you, but
you come every week. In Italy, I had no choice. Rapid round, then we'll get another question. One word answers. All right. Here we go.
Yep.
Is Gavin Newsom smart to host people like Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon on his podcast? Politically smart, yes or no?
Yes.
Interesting. Should Kamala Harris run for president in 2028?
No.
Is John Fetterman doing a good job representing his state?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Will J.D. Vance be the Republican nominee for president in 2028?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably. Okay. All right. Let's get some more folks in. I enjoy the rapid rounds, and I'm glad to hear positions on those issues. Mr. Robbins, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind for former Ohio Congressman Tim Ryan.
Well, hi. I'm from Flagstaff, Arizona. Boy, I am one of Tim Ryan's Republican donors to in 2020 and in 2022. And I hope you run for statewide office.
Thank you, my friend.
We need your voice. We need your voice.
How'd the congressman get on your radar, Gary?
Oh, golly. He was one of the most, the first time he got in my radar was when he ran against Nancy Pelosi. And he was a Scoop Jackson type of pro-labor Democrat who was concerned about economic issues and not about all the fringe issues and all the groups.
Amazing.
Scoop Jackson. I like that comparison.
What's your question? What's your question for your hero, Tim Ryan?
What will it take for you to stay in the public square and please? And I think the governor makes the most sense as opposed to senator or as opposed to president. I think that the next step forward is governor.
Appreciate that.
And I believe that Democrats really benefit when they have governors run for president, because it shows that you've been able to do things and you've been able to not just speak, but to run things.
Yeah, agreed.
I
think governor.
How are we getting you from 30% to 100%?
A glass of wine. Thank you, Gary. I appreciate that. I agree. I mean, the executive, I think anybody who's in politics is being an executive would be the dream job, because you do have the ability to bring people together. You control the budget, you control reforms that can happen in the agencies outside of necessarily the purview of or the limitations of the Congress or the state legislature. So that would be a great job. There's no doubt about it. I told my wife that the best job probably be to be governor. So we'll see what happens.
Gary, you could be the head of Arizona Republicans for Ryan. Draft him in.
There you go. Now we're talking.
I'm there.
All right.
Okay.
Gary, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Gary.
I love the fact that Gary, I don't want to say Gary's random, but I love the fact that there's a guy in Arizona who's a Republican who's, I don't know, watching C-SPAN or whatever. And it's like, I need more Tim Ryan in my life. All right. Here's Katie. Congressman, you don't know that Katie is a two-way stalwart. Hasn't been on lately, although she's had her hands up a few times of late. Katie, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know which southern state you hail from and your question for Congressman Ryan, as Larry King would say, in our final moments.
All right. Well, hey, I'm from Louisiana, and we actually just left Little Rock. We're on our way back. We took a day trip there. But
What'd you do in Little Rock for the day?
well, we went to the zoo, and
Nice zoo.
It's not the very best, but not the worst either.
Where in Louisiana are you from, Katie?
Ruston. Mike Johnson's district.
Okay. Is that by Lake Charles?
No, sir. It's a pretty good way away. It's like we're at North Louisiana, about an hour and a half from the Arkansas border.
Okay.
We're actually 3 hours from Little Rock.
Where'd you have lunch in Little Rock?
Cheers. I was actually just asking Hunter. Okay, I was asking Hunter. I knew that you were a Capitol Hotel fan, but I didn't know if you had ever gone to Cheers. And I know you're a big foodie, and that's the top of my list to go to Little Rock.
Yeah, as somebody put in the chat, unfortunately, Katie, your signal's not the best, but there's someone put in the chat, the only place to eat in Little Rock if you're there for the day is Doe's Eat Place. It's a big Clinton hangout back in the day.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No. I haven't like Doe's.
Yeah.
I'm a Cheers fan.
Yeah. All right, Katie, before your signal just completely craps out, as we say in Lake Charles, what's your question for Congressman Ryan?
Okay, well, my kids were talking in the background whenever y'all were talking about the future of the Democratic Party, but I was kind of piggybacking on your question about the Gavin Newsom podcast and kind of wondering, where does Mr. Ryan think that the party is going as far as like presidential candidates in 2028? And just since we've all been toying around with that.
Yeah. Great question. Great question. Congressman, I'll piggyback off Katie's thing. Who are the three most likely nominees in 2028 for your party today? That'll give us a sense, I think, of where you think we're headed.
Yeah, I think we're probably going to be in the governor's space, I would think. I think you're going to be, Gretchen, Big Gretch out of Michigan. I think will probably be one of them. Shapiro obviously will probably run for sure. And coming out of Pennsylvania. I'm not sure who the third one would be. I think those governors, maybe it's a Wes Moore. I don't know.
Yeah. Let me ask you this way too. If you could pick your nominee right now, Tim Ryan, single elector, picks the nominee, can't be yourself. Who would you pick as the nominee?
Not myself. I think a kind of a industrial state mayor like a Big Gretch would be good. I think we don't have a whole lot of Southern governors.
Yeah.
I think some Midwestern kind of Scoop Jackson, pro union Democrat is gonna just when you look at them and you hear them, like an Alyssa Slotkin, just are like, yes. That's the message right there, and they embody the culture of the, Big Ten football and just kind of industrial state vibe. I think that's where we need to be.
Katie, I only hijacked your question because your audio wasn't great, but let's try again. Any follow-up you want to ask him before we close?
Well, so he does not feel, I'm guessing like you don't feel like Gavin has a path forward, like even with the moderating to the middle. Because I feel like that kind of has been the debate, is like whether he's being authentic with his moderation to the middle or if it's, just going to fall flat.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to be in a California state of mind.
State of mind, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't think that's a realistic place. And given the way he's governed, which is fine. I don't know the culture in California like I do in the Midwest, but I just don't see that as like, okay, we're going to come in, we're going to recapture the economic argument. And he's got a lot of things that he's done and supported as governor. And now you're back in the culture wars and you're way off message.
Katie, thank you. I'm glad
Thanks,
you
Katie.
got your Congressman, do you have 2 extra minutes for us,
Sure,
or you got to go?
Yeah.
All right, because I'll bring. They've got another former member of the House here. I can't resist.
My goodness, Danny!
Reuniting the two of you. How long did you guys serve together?
Dog years is like 50.
Yeah. Congressman Ryan, you don't know because you never watched Two-Way that Congressman Lipinski is a regular on our program. He shows up on a regular basis and is a great contributor. So, Congressman Lipinski, the floor is yours for former Ohio.
Oh, Timmy, good to see you. I picked Tim Ryan for the 2028 presidential candidate.
All right.
I want you to give me some hope. Back in 2016, we had about 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks in the Democratic caucus in the House where people like you, Ron Kine from Wisconsin, others were talking about, we need to figure out how did Trump pick up our working class voters? And we didn't do that. And then 2018, 2020, 2022, the party's like, oh, we don't need to worry about that. And 2024 comes and we got Trump about it. So my fear is the party doesn't do anything because we're not Donald Trump. And we never fix this problem that we have. We just keep hemorrhaging working class voters. Give me some hope that we're not going to do that.
All right, great way to end. Tim Ryan, give your announcement speech for governor/president right here.
I would say Dan was one of the courageous 67 that voted for me against Pelosi in 16. So I'll never forget him. I'll always be loyal to you, Dan, if you ever need me for anything. I'm not totally optimistic. I think we can win the House back just by doing kind of the things I was talking about on vets and economics and that kind of thing. We could probably win the House back on that if we stay disciplined. But I do think we've got to figure out how to take all these strands out there, the technology, just kind of a summation of what me and Mark were talking about around embracing the technology and putting a working class spin on it. So let me give you a quick example. Like I was talking about the code comply for the building commissioners to get investment going into our urban areas. The other part of that is a company called Toggle, which helps contractors use AI. And some people will say, well, that's going to reduce jobs. Well, it's actually going to allow contractors to do more jobs because they're going to spend less time, trying to figure out all the kind of the backroom stuff to get union construction workers out there on the jobs. There's plenty of work to go around. I think the other thing that we did not talk about tonight around this economic agenda is there's got to be a huge rural component. And I know you had a district that had a lot of rural communities in it, and your state does as well. Like, what's our economic message in those small, mid-sized towns, those villages that are on dirty rivers, that their downtowns have fallen apart? There's no manufacturing in those communities. What's the, Social Security is suspect. The prescription drugs are too high. What's the economic message Democrats are bringing to those rural areas? We don't even freaking go there anymore. Like you got to show up. I remember on a bus tour, Mark, I don't know if you were on this, but Obama went from the Dayton minor league baseball stadium And the bus tour went down through Southwest Ohio, all the way down to a rally in Portsmouth at the community college in the evening. And he stopped along the way at these mom and pop shops. There's the first black nominee, first black president in rural white Ohio, buying pies and hugging small town, small business owners. That's how he won Ohio with 51%. You got to show up in these communities and don't feel like you need all the answers. Shut up and listen, and hear what people are saying. They just want to know you care. And so I think that's got to be the element. I mean, Carter, I don't know, Jimmy Carter, one of his policy guys said, Democrats show up to a gunfight with a 10-point policy plan. And I just don't want us to keep getting caught up in that stuff. Get into where you're caring about people, and it's about emotional connection. I feel your pain, and then the policy flows from there.
Congressman Lipinski, would you encourage Congressman Ryan to come on two-way more often?
Come on whenever you can,
Yeah.
Tim.
All right.
I will for sure. I'm pouring a glass of wine or a bourbon next time.
Yeah.
We'll get this party going.
All right.
I will too.
Grateful to you both, Congressman Lipinski. Thanks for joining. Congressman Ryan, loved having you. Hope you'll come back regularly. And whether you run for anything or not, we love your voice. And Gary's reaction to you is what I hear all the time from Republicans and independents and Democrats. But your voice is singular, and we just love having you on. So please come back whenever you can.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Mark. I'll be back soon.
Great to see you. All right. Some upcoming programs this week. Want to let you know about, of course, in a few hours, Sean, Dan, and I will be here for the morning meeting at 9 a.m. Eastern time. You won't want to miss that. Tomorrow, Meghan McCain's show, Meghan McCain's Happy Hour is on. Two spectacular guests, as usual. Michael Moynihan, who you may or may not know, is about to debut his own show on Two Way. More on that in a moment. One of the best journalists, commentators, thinkers I know, and we're so happy to have him and Meghan here on Two Way. And Katrina Zish of Newsmax anchor is also going to be on with Meghan. So don't miss that. That, of course, is tomorrow, 5 Eastern time, right before Two Way tonight. So don't miss Meghan McCain's Happy Hour. 6 o'clock Eastern, I'll be back with Alex Eisenstadt of Axios. He's been on a lot regularly lately because he's a brilliant guy and a great reporter. But this is the week his book is finally out, right? The book's finally out? Yes.
Out today.
Revenge, the inside story of Trump's return to power. Alex has done a masterful job of promoting his book in a million different places. As I said last time he was on, he asked me about a year ago for advice of how to promote his book, and he's put me to shame. The man is a marketing genius, and the book is excellent and really well reported. So Alex will be here tomorrow to answer questions about all things Trump and his book Revenge. And then my show tomorrow night. And then Thursday, it is the premiere of the Moynihan Report. Michael Moynihan finally debuts after a giant wind-up of coming to our platform. He's finally ready to share the Moynihan Report. It'll be on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4. Meghan is Monday and Wednesdays at 5. Michael Tuesday and Thursdays at 4, as we fill out the two-way platform with more programs coming, including programs that have nothing to do with politics that I know you will love. Michael's show, sponsored by the group FIRE, a great advocacy group that really fights for First Amendment rights and free speech. So Michael's program debuts Thursday at 4, and we'll have more to tell you about that between now and Thursday. Couldn't be more grateful to Congressman Ryan, who joined us, Congressman Lipinski, surprise guest, Katie Johnson coming back from Little Rock, Gary, head of Republicans from the Southwest for Tim Ryan for governor/president, and everybody else who participated tonight. Couldn't be more grateful to have you watch. I'm going to finish my dinner here after midnight, this incredible spaghetti pomodoro, and maybe get a refill on the wine to celebrate another successful day here in Milan. Thank you for joining. Have a good night. See you at 9 Eastern with Dan and Sean. Good night.